You might notice I'm in a different location. I'm in El Salvador. I've been here for a couple of weeks and came down here for a conference. I'll show you in a moment the conference on AI. The conference on AI in El Salvador, you may ask? Well, it's a country that is lurching ahead of many other countries, and we'll talk about that maybe in another episode. But today I wanted to talk about I had an excellent interview. So in my visit here, I decided I'm going to stay a little bit longer and go see some other parts of the country. And I went down to the coast in El Salvador. It's a famous area for surfing. It's got great waves and a great, just a good place to hang out. And I stayed at a little place called Esencia Nativa, or Native Essence. And I'm probably killing the name of that, but I'll get there. So I'm sitting there and enjoying it, and there's a surf school going on, and I'm watching the guy, the teacher, who turns out to be the owner of the place, teaching his class, and he's in his element. And I was observing a businessman operating in what every business person probably desires, is to have a business built around your passion. And you could just see that he was in his best place. It was cool to see the students. It was cool to see him teaching and coaching, the environment. Everything that was going on was like I was just sitting there asking myself, have I done the same thing in my business, right? It's like, have you built your business around where you really shine? And Alex had done that, and it was obvious. And so I ended up interviewing him. And so why am I talking about it on this? I took that interview and I put it into NotebookLM as a demonstration of a great way to use NotebookLM to produce content from messy notes or information. So imagine you have a business. So how does it apply to you? Imagine you have a business and you're interviewing someone that's used your services. This is a great example of extracting what they think and what they're saying, and then putting it into NotebookLM, and then producing assets that I'm going to show you. So let's give you a backstory on Alex and his surf school called Surfing Your Fears. So he owns a hotel, and that's where the surfers stay. It's got a restaurant, it's got a pool, it's got a patio. You can see the river, you can see the ocean, and it's just a wonderful place to hang out, which I took advantage of. And I'm not a surfer, but it was like it was impressive to see a business being run by someone in their zone. This is Alex Novoa. You may later start to refer him as Supernova Alex. But anyway, I enjoyed talking with Alex. I sat down for an interview, and what I did is I pulled that interview, and today I'm going to show you some of the things that came out of the interview. Super cool. So again, let me clumsily share my screen. Here we go. You can do it, Steve. You can do this. Am I doing that? Yes, share your screen. All right. We're going to share the window of this. Here we go. And we're sharing. After so many episodes, you'd think that I'd get this down. So here we go. So we're in NotebookLM, and if you've been following me, you know that this is a place where you can put in information. In relation to my AI conference, there was a couple of points that were really emphasized. And in the example of El Salvador, they're preparing a future for their country and their people, to be the center of artificial intelligence, and so they're building a system around that, so they have plenty of energy, they have plenty of technology, and that they own all of their intellectual property, so to speak. Imagine a nation having this massive amount of intellectual property. And so that the example of NotebookLM is, here's a place where you park your information. Okay, you're putting in the information you approve into the sources area. And if you've been following me, I've showed you this, but in NotebookLM, when you pop in, you got a sources area. This is where you add your sources, meaning that when you ask the chatbot to do something here, your AI chatbot, then it's not running outside unless you tell it to. It's not running outside on the internet. It's only pulling from your sources that you put in. So therefore, what you're doing is you're making sure that the output that of the assets that you generate, this is like having a whole marketing team over here, that any of these outputs, they're going to be informed by your inputs. And so gold in, gold out. And then over here is where you can have all sorts of conversations and interrogate your information, create more concentrated pieces, and then in a way put them over here. But in this case, what I put in was, here's the interview. This is just a recording that Alex and I sat for time yesterday, actually, and we had about a 20-30 minute conversation. So the source guide shows the essence of what we discussed. This is the actual notes of what went on. And so it's messy, rambling, and we went off on explored some areas and came back and then wrapped up. But it's just a conversation, okay? And then I took I asked Grok, in this case, I put in that information and asked it to make me a source guide around the conversation. And so it created more of a structured output with the intent of what I wanted to come from that interview. And so I brought that in as a source itself as well. And then I brought in their website. And so their website, I'll show you here. This is his surfing website, and it's called Surfing Your Fears. And obviously, if you're out in the water, you're going to have some fears. But, you know, Alex is this business person, and I was sitting there talking with him, and, you know, running your own business, whether you're, you know, a sole proprietor, or you're running a team, or you're leading a team, you know, you have waves of unexpected things that are happening in your business, and basically you have to surf your fears. And I just thought, man, this is excellent. What Alex is, the philosophy that he's exploring here is applicable to every business. But I thought it was super interesting. He has a very interesting story. So let's get back to the story. So, you know, I asked for this. Imagine now I have a 20-minute conversation, and I want to give you the essence of that conversation. And so, first of all, when I use NotebookLM, here's how to think about it. You know, our eyes are designed, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and our eyes are very powerful. And so we want to bring in a lot of information all of a sudden and get the gist of what's going on. And an infographic is an amazing piece to accomplish. You can take a whole story and quickly distill it down into a pictogram. That's what an infographic is, basically a pictogram. Imagine back in the day, it wasn't called a pictogram, it's called a cave painting, right? And so here we have the essence of Alex's story. And so here he is on the English native essence, and turns out that their property, when they're working on it, it's on indigenous land, and he named it this because he was honoring what used to be this point. He's on a river where this fresh water comes into the ocean. And so imagine a community. What does it need? It needs fresh water, and it needs a place to fish. And so this is an actual intersection point of where a community was built. He skipped university several times. He wanted to surf. He wanted to just surf. And so he ended up, cooking hamburgers to fund his life. Flipped that into serving his community. So he established free English schools, water projects, kids kitchen clubs. Then about 3 years ago, he started a surf school. And so it's basically it's like therapy. He's using surf school as a tool to help clients face fear and process trauma. And his philosophy is ocean mirrors your life. Alex teaches that reactions in the water reflect one's behavior in business and in family. So personal passion, community impact, and then surf therapy. And so imagine how easy that is to use NotebookLM. If you notice here, it honors the rules of story. Set it up. Where do we begin, and who's our hero in this story? And then here's the journey and where we end up. The next, when you're wanting to communicate information, a comic book. Now, this is when you were a kid, you spent time in comic books, and comic books are a way to take and collapse. And now we have a series of infographics, if you will. So the prompt I used on this was to generate 8 powerful shareable quotes with 1-sentence explanations of why each matters in a graphic novel style. And so this built a beautiful storyboard of the Essentia Nativia story. And you can see that, for 24 years, Alex didn't just build a business in El Salvador. He survived gang violence, unearthed indigenous history beneath his feet, and discovered that the ocean teaches everything society forgets. He had a burger stand he called the Oasis. And from a hammock-dwelling surfer to the founder of a surf therapy movement, he talked about there, up in the mountains, there's all these relics of the past. And so true wealth isn't found in relentless expansion, but in grounding yourself in the fundamental native essence of humanity. So here's a businessman that understands that your why you do something needs to be reflected in how you show up and operate in your business. And so he calls, he's honoring his past with the name of his business. And then here's a businessman, but he didn't want to be in the corporate world. He wanted to be connected with the ocean. And so he didn't set out to build a business. He set out to surf every day for the rest of his life. But when you organize your life around your deepest passion rather than societal expectations, purpose naturally evolves into a sustainable livelihood. Man, I love that. And it was coming out in the interview. And so his story was, like, hey, I went and learned how to cook. He went and he worked in some hotels. He took culinary school training so that he could just, his plan was to be able to cook burgers no matter what country he was in. That was how he was going to pay for his surfing. But what did it turn out to be? He stayed even during gang violence and developed ways for the local kids to apply themselves instead of get caught up in the violence that was happening. And then from that demonstration of his engagement in his community, it ended up, that's why the main reason that he was able to purchase the place that is his business now from someone in the community. They wanted it to go to someone who cared about the community. And there he was demonstrating it every day for years. And now he's teaching people that would be my face if I was out there on the surfboard, but he's teaching people how to face their fears. And it ties back to his story of having to deal with um, the gangs. They would come and try to extort money out of him every month. And, when I heard his story, I could see that is why it's called Surfing Your Fears. And that's why he's demonstrating how he had to learn to operate in life. And then he was able to apply it to how people show up and learn to take advantage of all the waves that we get hit with. And so it's awesome how his program shows up in his therapy. And the students, I watch the students, they all, to a person, come back inspired from being out on the ocean with him. This is an example. He was building an environment of safety for the kids in his community when the outside environment was dangerous. NotebookLM does beautiful. And you don't need to be a storyteller. You need to capture what's inside people's head. You need to recognize it and pull that gold out. And NotebookLM organizes it in a beautiful way that helps you communicate in a visual storytelling way. And so I was really inspired by this. And meaningful progress requires facing the full impact of your fears head on rather than trying to effortlessly float above them. So now the story's wrapping up. He didn't do it for the money. He did it because he was a junkie for the waves and the people. And so here's his, this is how his philosophy comes out. The waves are uncontrollable, and that's your external market. Sudden crises, unpredictable life events, and the paddle. That's the friction. You got to do the work. The daily operational grind and necessity of confronting resistance head on. I watch people go out in the waves, and they have to paddle on top of their surfboard into oncoming waves to get to the place where they can surf the waves. And so they have to do all this work and go through these multiple assaults from the waves to get out there. And then you do catch a wave and they wipe out. So we've all wiped out in many ways in our lives, and it impacts us. And so then the lineup, I thought this was really cool, a lineup that ties it with community. And so that's your social dynamics, earning respect, and finding your rightful place in a complex ecosystem. The lineup, I guess when you go out and you wait to catch a wave, you finally made it through all of this and you're ready to catch a wave. There's an etiquette they follow out there in a kind of a community of those who did what? Went through all those things and now they're kind of hanging out and bonding. That's the lineup. And so then a natural call to action. Isn't that cool? The other things that I asked it produce was a deep dive. I'll put the link to this. It's a really great discussion about the conversation in depth. So when you're walking in, you're taking this information. Let's say you have a high value, high stake conversation coming up. You can walk people in to the details after you win their approval or the brain's approval to stay and pay attention. So an infographic quickly says, here's what we're going to cover. And the brain says, yeah, this is good. I can see where we're going here. Stick around. These are more detailed specifics of that main infographic in the story arc, right? So each slide goes through more specificity, more specifics of each stop in the story. And then this deep dive is like really powerful. And so this one turns into almost a 20-minute discussion of the specifics but in a story outline. So we'll put this in there and you can listen to it. It's really excellent. And it outlines, more concepts, more depth, but we're having to ask our end user's brain to hang around and invest this time that's valuable. And this is how you win approval of the brain. And then I asked it to, all right, so in this, when you use this, you see these reports. These reports can take that content that you put it, remember, our sources, and produce many variations that you need, a study guide, a blog post, a briefing doc, and then it'll even go through and give you other suggested outputs. And right now it's generating suggestions. So like a business strategy blueprint from Alex's framework, or a methodology white paper, or a cultural heritage narrative, or a philosophical introduction. So you can get many outputs from one input. So gold in and all these variations of gold out. In this case, what I wanted to do was I asked it to write a 700-word founder profile article titled From Hammock to Healing. And it's a 24-year blueprint for community and confidence suitable for a website or a magazine. And so this is what it put out. So imagine being able to take this now. You could copy it, download it, and then use it in any way that you want. So what are we doing? We're taking it, we're collecting information from a conversation, from a video, from a website, and we're organizing it into a way, putting it into a tool that is fine-tuned to honor the rules of story, which your brain craves, and then produce an output that is beautiful. And you can influence the perspective of this output by your prompts, okay? So, beautiful stuff, beautiful story that I just stumbled into. And I was really glad that I went there and met Alex and got to observe him working in his zone. Is very inspirational. I think it's inspirational for any business person to figure out a way to design your business or your job or whatever you are as far as leading and needing to use NotebookLM to help you communicate better. But it's like design your system. It wasn't easy for him. He had to stand up. He had, he called himself the black sheep. He had to pick his own way and pay his own way, so to speak, and face a lot of fears. But man, it just bubbled out into his philosophy, and I could see it in his students. So, all right. So what did we learn today? Go out and capture some great content. Bring it in here and put it into your sources. And then think about the perspective you want to emphasize, and then put it in your prompts when you bring it in here. You can get a video overview, audio, slide decks, mind maps, flashcards, infographics. You get these assets to help you win in high stakes communications, or wanting to present something very inspirational that you ran across. And in my case, it did in El Salvador. All right. AI Made Simple. Use that QR code. Reach out. Let me know if I can help you do this. Like and subscribe. We'll see you on another episode of AI Made Simple. And that's a wrap.